Kansas City Real Talk, brought to you by KCRAR. I'm your host, Alex Gehring. Today, we're bringing on the 2026 president of KCRAR, David Nichols. You may have heard David's last president's episode, but it was all the way back in January of 2019. Oh my gosh, he was president of Heartland MLS. And guys, it was like a year before the entire world changed. It was nuts. David is not only a past HMLS president, he is also a broker and brings many years of experience in real estate to the table. Like I say, so many things have changed since David was president of Heartland MLS and since we last had him on. It's going to be so fun to talk to him now, almost 7 years later, and hear how his career and the way that he thinks about the industry has changed since then. Just a quick note, you can have an opportunity to chat with David later this month at the YPN's Meet the Board of Directors event on January 21st, 2026 at J. Rieger in KC Mo. You can get more information in the KCRAR Education and Events campus. Guys, let's go get David. Welcome back to Kansas City Real Talk, brought to you by KCRAR. I am here with David Nichols. David, it has been 7 years since the last time you were on this podcast.
Wow. Yeah, it was
7 years.
And at that time, I was president of the MLS or incoming president.
Yeah.
Or
you had just started as president of the multiple listing service. Since 2019, let's see, we've gone through a pandemic. We've gone through 0.6 months of inventory in our marketplace. We've gone through a massive change a perceived massive change in the way that we communicate about compensation due to a settlement.
Yep.
And now we're here. You've been through a lot in 7 years. And in fact, what I think this might be the first time we've had somebody on where it's been 7 years since you've been in. So it's kind of fun. People might need to go back and compare and contrast the experiences of David Nichols.
It's been a lot of change.
A lot of change. Yeah. A lot of change. Of all of those, what do you see as the biggest change we've experienced in the industry?
I mean, the lawsuit settlement obviously changed so much of how we operate. The net result isn't as big of a change as anybody thought it was going to be, but it did change how we communicate, what we're allowed to say and not allowed to say. At the other side of it, because when we were going through it, it just felt like we were going through a war, right? On the other side of it, I think we're actually better.
We are. I agree. Wholly.
Yeah. I think it's a better consumer experience. I think it empowers the agents more. It empowers the consumer more. It's a lot more transparent for the consumer. It is a great change for us. It's a shame that it took what it took to get us there.
Yeah. When you say that we're better as a result, I totally agree. You mentioned that you feel like it's better for the consumer. How do you feel like the consumer perception of us might change in the long term as a result of the changes that we had to make?
I hope that what it gives us is more professionalism and that the consumer sees that, right? And I believe that now that we're getting through the what we call the artificial real estate market that we're coming out of, because that was an artificial market. Everything about it was artificial. Interest rates were artificially low. Inventory was artificially low. And we're getting back to what feels like the first time since 2019.
When you were on last.
Yeah, a normal real estate market, normal cycles, normal interest rates, normal days on market, all of that. I think that we have an opportunity to not just raise the professionalism in our industry, but to communicate that we've done that and let the consumer see the value that we provide at a higher level. Because I think that we kind of commoditized ourselves a little bit during the artificially crazy market where you didn't need a great real estate agent. You just needed somebody to put a sign in the yard. And now I think the those agents who are really investing in their skill and their training and their development, I think you're going to see that cream rise to the top again. So for a while, it felt like you didn't have to be great.
Right.
You just had to be there.
And as a result, a lot of people during 2021 and 2022 really extended themselves financially. One of the things that Buffini talked about in his bold predictions, which you said a lot of the words that he had said, right, are the artificial, right, where we were experiencing an artificial market. One of the things that he had said is that the morale, he maybe didn't use these words, but the morale of the real estate professional is low.
Well, I think they felt beat up.
They felt beat up. Yeah. Do you feel like that's the way that people are feeling right now in Kansas City?
Yeah. Wow, interesting question. I think some people are excited. Mm-hmm. I've talked to a lot of real estate agents that are really excited about 2026. Mm-hmm. I think some people are anxious and have some anxiety because they've never been through this. Like if you got licensed in 2021, mm-hmm. this is all very new to you.
Right.
So you're having to go through a lot of change and growth and development to understand that.
Really quickly, when you say this is all really new to you, what are we talking about?
Days on market.
Days on market being going up. The 2019 normal feel. Okay.
So if you were an agent prior to the pandemic, it was not uncommon for you to have a schedule of calling your listings once a week and giving them an update. And then the pandemic hit, and you didn't have to do that kind of stuff. You just had to watch the offers roll in, and then you had to help sort through 20, 30, 40 offers. And so those days are feels like they're going away, at least for now. And we're going back to a market where you have to have a different set of skills. Holding your client's hand through, oh my gosh, my house has been on the market for 3 weeks. Why hasn't it sold? Well, that's normal.
Absolutely.
Now. That's our new normal. And if again, those agents that were around prior to that, that's skill set that they already had. They just got to dust it off and maybe tweak it to a more modern time. But those agents that got licensed after that, this is all new to them.
Right. Absolutely. Well, let's talk about your past a little bit because it's relevant.
Okay.
So you and correct me if I'm wrong, I tried to do some research. You and your wife moved to Kansas City after you had already had a real estate business previously. You came in 2007, is that right?
Correct. Right at the crash.
Right at the crash. So you experienced 11 months of inventory.
Oh, absolutely.
In Kansas City. You experienced a prolonged period of a true buyer's market.
Yeah, I used to joke that you wanted to be the second listing agent.
Yeah.
Not the first one.
Yeah.
Because it was once they went through the desperation of having their home on the market for 6-8 months, they were ready to listen to the hard truths of your home just isn't worth what you think it's worth. And learning how to price a home in a declining market to be in front of the decline was a real skill set. And then we got to the point where you just looked at a comp, during the last 4 or 5 years, you looked at a comp and you said, okay, add 10% to it and you'll probably get that. Those days, that's not happening right now.
Right.
And so I don't know if it's over forever. I mean, obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but when we're looking at, 30 days plus average days on the market, then it's a different skill set to help those people versus I need to sit back and watch the 25 offers roll in. I do think the skill set of pricing a home it's part science, part art.
Right.
And so really refining that skill set, especially if you haven't had to be great at pricing homes, and let's face it, most of us hadn't had to be great at pricing a home.
The market did it for us.
The market did it for us. I think those agents that are pouring into that kind of education and working hard to learn those skills, I think they're going to thrive.
Yeah. So here's kind of what I'm thinking about a lot right now, right, is that extreme difference between dealing with 11 months of inventory like you were experiencing when you first came to Kansas City and experiencing 0.6 months of inventory like we had in 2023. And then, of course, still historically remarkably low inventory, that we're really still experiencing, especially if you take out new home construction right now. We're still at like 1.5 months of inventory in certain areas. I know but I think that from my perspective, it doesn't seem like we've been in the middle really for any amount of time at all between there. Like the middle being like a true 6 months of inventory. We weren't there for very long between 7 and 14. Once we got to 14, we're at like 3 to 4 months of inventory already.
I mean,
right?
2012, 2013, 2014 felt good.
Yeah, because it was balanced.
It felt balanced. And Realtor.com just put out an article about the most balanced real estate markets in the nation, and Kansas City was number one.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at the Midwest and saying, it's going to be a great 2026. Yeah. Everybody's predicting it to be really strong in the Midwest. But the Midwest was always kind of the little engine that could when it came even to the crash, right?
Right.
We didn't have quite the highs of, Las Vegas and Los Angeles and Phoenix and DC. You weren't getting houses doubling every 6 months in value. And we didn't have quite the low lows either. It didn't fall off. It was a lot more Midwestern in the way we Midwesterners think, and a little more predictable, not quite as volatile. But that's kind of who we are here in Kansas City, right?
Right, yeah. Right. And so a lot of what we've experienced since then, right, has been kind of against our nature, right?
Yeah.
Since those years that, to use your words, felt pretty good.
Yeah,
felt pretty good. I think I think that there's a different skill set that comes with that balanced market, though. Too, I think you've got to have a skill set for the really high inventory markets and a skill set for the really low inventory markets. What does that skill set look like when it's balanced? It might feel good, but who does it feel good for? There's got to be losers in that market too.
Well, regardless of the market, there's going to be those who adapt and master it, and there are going to be those who sit on the sidelines and complain about it.
Right.
I made my mark in Kansas City in the crash when everybody was, 11 months of inventory. It felt like you were giving homes away. It was hard. We were doing short sales. We were doing foreclosures, like hundreds of them, and that was a different skill set, and you had to adapt to that skill set. And then, we kind of went to a balanced market for a couple of years there, where it felt like, okay, this is, quote, normal.
Right.
And then we got to 19, and 19 was a really healthy year in real estate. And then the pandemic hit and things went crazy.
Right.
So the skill sets are, you have to be a little more talented of a negotiator, I think, when you have a home that's on the market and you don't have 25 offers, because at that point you're just looking for, okay, it's like an auction, who wants it the most, right? You have to be really talented and skilled at pricing homes appropriately, especially in a world that there's 45 AIs, including Zillow, that's all it is an AI pricing tool, right, that are telling the consumer, well, your home is worth X, and that may or may not be accurate. It's a snapshot, right? But they can't tell you how it smells.
Yeah.
They can't tell you that two homes sitting side by side, both built, at the exact same time, exact same floor plan, but one, the people didn't take care of it, and the other one, you had some retired colonel in the Air Force who never walked in it with his shoes on, right? And it's meticulously maintained. They don't understand, the machines don't understand that, and I think that's where the really great real estate agents shine. They can take the data that the consumer already has, right? Mm-hmm. They all have access to the data, but interpret the data in a way to give the consumer amazing advice.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, yes, this beautiful bright yellow you painted your kitchen is cool for you, but the average consumer doesn't want that. We probably need to go back to a neutral color here if we want to maximize your value, or you need to replace the carpet.
Right.
And they say, well, my neighbor didn't replace their carpet. Well, your neighbor was lucky enough to be on the tail end of the crazy.
Right.
And now we're getting back to normal, and the consumer has choices, and the buyers don't feel like they have to rush home and make a decision. Now, as soon as we say that, somebody's going to say, "Oh, well, I had multiple offers 3 days ago." Yes, but that's more the exception to the rule right now than the rule.
I also think that agents provide a level of proof of concept that that an AI agent, in quotes, couldn't really provide. The agents did it last week. They talked to somebody, they helped somebody through it, right? And they can tell that story. They maybe walked through that neighbor's house that sold with multiple offers, and they know the guy that bought it and the agent that sold it to him was in their office, and they know more details than anybody else or than a chat bot is going to be able to talk to him about. You mentioned negotiation.
Yeah.
Do you feel, and be honest, do you feel that agents are, given what we've been through, do you feel that they are primed to negotiate well for their clients right now?
I think there are some amazing negotiators out there. Mm-hmm. I think that the typical agent probably isn't, and they need to get good at it right now.
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I 100% agree.
They need to go read a book, Never Split the Difference.
Yeah, I agree.
Great book, yeah. Mm-hmm. And they need to start asking themselves, what does it feel like to negotiate and fulfill my fiduciary responsibility to my client?
Right? Absolutely.
And hey, here's the cool thing. You can get on ChatGPT and actually role play with it. And so it can help you with that. If you don't do that, you better find a mentor or an accountability partner or somebody to do that stuff with. One of the things, there's a really cool book called Exactly What to Say for Real Estate.
By Jimmy Mackin.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great quote in that is that the time to think about what you're going to say is not when you have to say it.
Yeah.
Right? And I love that. I think that you role play not just what to say to the other agent, but to your client when they get an offer that's 10% below list price.
Right.
Right. But some of that is also about learning how to manage clients' expectations differently in a shifting market. Because I was listening to somebody who said the first people to know that a market is shifting are the buyers. They feel it immediately. The second group of people to notice that a market is shifting are the agents, right? So we're like, oh yeah, my buyer's right. Mm-hmm. There is more to see, right? Mm-hmm. That house has been on the market longer. The last people to realize that the market is shifting are the sellers, because they just know last month or 2 months ago, my neighbor, this is the way it happened for my neighbor. And so we have to manage their expectations about that market. And that is, again, that's a skill. I think great communicators, people who really pour into being students of the market, who study the data, who learn how to negotiate on behalf of their clients, learn how to communicate and help their client get out of the emotional, because buying and selling real estate is such an emotional thing, and helping them pull some of that emotion out is important.
Instead of pouring the emotion in, which some of them do that, man.
Yeah,
some
again, that's where
it.
that raise the bar, let's get the professionalism way, way high in our industry needs to happen.
Absolutely.
That's where, challenge to my broker community, start pouring back into your agents right now.
Yes.
Give them the training, give them the tools, give them the support that they need.
My theory on that is that when somebody wants to pour in the drama or the emotion into the transaction, it's because they've perceived negotiation or a problem as conflict. And we're so afraid of conflict in the Midwest in general.
Yes.
We're not, or confrontation is a better word. Confrontation. Conflict happens. Confrontation, if somebody calls and asks you for something that you don't want to give them in the Midwest, or something that's different from what you experienced in your last transaction, and it's so easy for your default to be, this feels like confrontation and I don't want to call my client and tell them what you just told me. And I worry that people they perceive the simplest things sometimes as confrontation. You used all 10 days of your inspection period, you're an asshole. And it's like, well, no, there's 10 days of my inspection period in the contract, and I guess to me, because I hear that kind of stuff regularly, it drives me crazy.
But that could be strategy.
It could, exactly.
Right.
And it's fine. It's totally fine to use all 10 days of your inspection period. That's what was in the contract.
If you didn't want us to have 10 days, you should have negotiated it shorter. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And so instead of taking that confrontation in quotes up front and saying, hey, I want a 6-day inspection period, you perceive the use of all 10 days that you just allowed to be there by default as the confrontation. And then you get fired up and you tell your client that you think that it's unfair.
Well, look, that's not our job.
That's right.
Our job is to de-emotionalize the process, not add more emotion to it. The great agents, the really talented ones, are really good at absorbing whatever perceived drama the other people are throwing at us and communicating it back to our client in a way that doesn't add more drama.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And I think that is an incredibly important skill. You talked about inspections, man, another skill set.
Yes.
Like if you only sold real estate during the cycle where nobody did inspections, or if they did inspections, it was only for information.
Right.
The skill set of taking an inspection report and writing a resolution that actually makes sense, that is clear to all parties, and then negotiating those terms with the other side is a skill set.
That's right. And there's an art to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a broker, some of the things that we read sometimes on a resolution, because it's after the fact when we see them, right?
Yep.
Like, what is that? Yeah. So, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, her teachings. And one of the things that she says is clear is kind, right? So when negotiating, being clear is actually a type of kindness. And sometimes us Midwesterners, we would rather be polite than clear. Sometimes polite isn't actually kind.
Oh, man, I love that.
Right?
That's so true.
Yeah. So, we got to let people know, look, here's a line in the sand for my client, right? You need to know that when you go talk to your client. It's not a threat. It's not a demand. It's me letting you know if your client doesn't take care of X, my client's going to walk.
That's right.
Right. And our job is to hold deals together. And you saw the last 8 months or so, the fallout rate has skyrocketed in America and here in Kansas City too, because we didn't have that skill as sharp as it once was. And for some people, they never had it. So we were so used to, once you had the contract, we were closing, to a world now where just because you got a contract doesn't mean you're going to get to the table. And I think historically somewhere around 8 to 12% fallout rate was normal. Well, we were seeing fallout rates as high as 20%.
Right.
And I have to believe that some of that is on us.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we didn't have
no
the skills to deal with that.
Doctor. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that's absolutely correct. We've talked a little bit about agents and how they can fine tune their skill set. Well, let's talk about managers, right? With 2026 and with some of this normalization in the market and getting back to 2019 and being able to put some of this like artificial market stuff behind us, how do managers need to adapt?
I mean, I hesitate to be too much there because I'm a manager and I don't want to make it sound like everybody should run their company the way we run ours.
Oh, sure. But I mean from like a coaching perspective. I don't mean from a company policy perspective. I mean from the way that you discuss things with your agents.
I mean, there are plenty of models that don't do any coaching or any real training, and that's okay. There are agents that need to be in a company like that, and that's where they're going to thrive. I think really it goes back to know what your value is as an organization. If your value is price, then so be it. Live there. If your value is coaching, training, development, so be it. Live there. If your value is technology, so be it. Live there. But I think as brokers and managers, we have to know what our value proposition is.
Sure.
And we have to be true to what that is.
If there were 2 to 3 things that you would tell an agent that relies on you for coaching and mentorship right now to prepare them for normalcy in 2019, what would those 2 to 3 most important things be?
Wow. you better get good at pricing homes. And the only way to do that is to price homes over and over and over again. You need to get indoors. You need to look at homes. You need to understand the communities where you're selling and the micro markets within the Kansas City area, because there are lots of them. I think we kind of got away from being a specialist a little bit, and we were generalist again because of the artificial market. And now honing your skills in and being a specialist in a community is not a bad thing. Not that you couldn't go sell a property on the other side of town. You're just going to have to research really well to know what you're talking about when you get there.
Yeah.
The great thing about that, though, is the technology has evolved at such a pace that getting that information is a lot easier than it ever was, right? Our AI does a lot of that, and AI is a big part of the toolbox of the future of real estate agents and real estate brokerages. I think read your contract, actually read your contract, actually know what it says.
Yeah.
And I know that you teach contract training, and so it's a big part of like what's in your heart when you talk to people, because I've heard you teach that class. It's an amazing class. But most agents, I don't think, really know their contract. If you're a broker, obviously, I would hope that you know it like the back of your hand. But we change the contract a little bit every year.
Right.
And so if you're one of those people who maybe hadn't sold a home in 6 months and we get a new contract, the time to understand it isn't, I have to write a contract for the first time, right? You need to be a student of this industry if you want to sell a lot of real estate. If you want to dabble, then there's plenty of people who want to just sell 3 or 4 homes a year and they make a little extra money. That's okay too. There's a place for them in our business. You may not have to be quite the expert, but if you want to sell 15, 20, 30 homes a year, and there are plenty of people who do that, you better be an absolute expert. You don't have time to relearn stuff all the time.
Right.
So,
well, I think that kind of hits the plan part of it. Back to bold predictions, Brian Buffini said that agents need hope and a plan, right? So you just covered the plan part of it, and I know that you're the way that you're an inspirational guy. I truly feel that way.
Thank you.
From a hope perspective, what do you think? What's maybe one thing that an agent needs to hear right now? We kind of started saying that people were maybe not feeling 100%.
Look, if Brian's right, if Dr. Yoon is right, we're going to have 12, 14% more homes sold next year.
There you go.
And we're going to have a few 100,000 less agents doing it.
20% fewer agents with 14% more units.
So that's, as Brian said, that's more beer for us, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. I'm a huge Brian Buffini fan. I went through his coaching 26 years ago. I have been a proctor in the 100 Days of Greatness program for him. It's a big part of what I teach. Kind of my spin on Brian Buffini. And I think he's right. And I think that there are some people who just say, you know what, this is getting too hard and it's time for me to get out. Okay, great. That's okay. We have to be okay with that. But those who pour into it, I think they're going to have an amazing 2026. Mm-hmm. We were talking about it this morning, looking at our numbers. 2025 is our record for our company, best year ever. Mm-hmm. The best year before that was actually 2019, right? And we kind of hit that little bit of a valley because in my world,
units matter.
Yeah. Units matter. Yeah. And so if that trend continues, then 2026 is going to be our best year ever.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about that. And I think our agents should be excited about that.
Absolutely. It means more opportunity, period.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, natural attrition in our industry is going to happen. It always has. It always will. You got some people who will retire out. You get a lot of people who get into our business thinking that it's HGTV. I show 3 houses and I get paid a lot of money, right? And it's real easy. This is a hard business.
Yeah.
And I think you almost have to come into it and, get your ass kicked a little bit before you realize how hard it can be. You have to be one of those people who's Unfortunately, you may be a big chunk of the 20% that fell apart. Right? And if you've only sold 3 or 4 homes and you've had 2 of them fall apart, I mean, that's really, really hard. When you think about, I'm a reader, and so obviously I'm going to keep talking about books because it's the way I teach. Malcolm Gladwell's, The Outliers book is so powerful. It takes 10,000 hours to master something. 10,000 hours. At 40 hours a week, it's 5 years. And the typical tenure of a real estate agent is like 2.
Right.
So,
and that's probably skewed.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably skews high.
Yeah. And so I came up with this theory that I call it the stair steps to mastery, based off of what I read in Gladwell's books, that we all start in the bottom stair. And the bottom stair is incompetent. And if you're going to get into this business, you have to have the courage to suck, because it's new and you don't know what you don't know. So you have to have the courage to pour yourself into it and learn and not be great in the beginning. And if you work really, really, really hard, you can become functionally incompetent. That's the second step. And that means you can do it. You're just not very good at it now. You went from incompetent to I can do it, I'm just not very good. And that's where having the right broker and mentor or team leader around you really makes a huge difference in your life. And you work really, really, really hard and you can get to competency. The problem with that is competency creates comfort. And most Americans, not just most real estate agents, most Americans in whatever endeavor they have, they stop at competency. There is a whole nother level. If you keep working and you want to master, go from competency to mastery, there's another step. There's actually 3 more steps. You get to proficient. From competency to proficient. Now I'm good. And then you can get efficient. Now I'm good and fast. And then eventually to mastery. And those, like if I were to try to price a home, after 26 years, I would think that I'm on that pathway, right? And I can do it really, really fast. And agents will come to me and say, hey, I need some help pricing this home. Will you look at it? And like 6 minutes into it, I'm like, the house is worth X. And they're like, I've been struggling with that for 2 hours. Yeah, well, you would expect me to have mastered it over all the years of helping people price homes, helping agents help people price homes.
Because it's not 10,000 hours of just being an agent.
No.
You're not achieving 10,000 hours of pricing homes takes a lot longer than 5 years.
Yes.
Right. Like that's, you could be at 5 years in the business and still struggle because you haven't experienced all of the different cycles and it's just different, right? Yeah. And so that's why I feel like that's what gets us stuck at competent.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's difficult.
Because of all the change.
All of the change. Because I'm competent now. I'm not competent tomorrow. There are things that you've got to learn. And then you've got to find the people that can teach it to you.
Well, and as you, like I saw people who were kind of masters of the multiple offer stuff, right? Well, that's not necessarily the skill set that you need tomorrow.
Right. And if you use those skills tomorrow, you might harm your buyer.
Or seller.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it's a tricky situation. All right, we talked a little bit now about, I love all of that. So this is so fun. Let's talk now about leadership in the association.
Sure.
Okay. So one of the things that we just talked about was conflict. Right. And you and I have served together. And I know from my time on the MLS board and on various committees, we could be talking about something really, really simple. And there could be some level of
You and I disagreed
conflict.
plenty.
We did disagree plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was respectable disagreements, but we disagreed. But then you have those conversations and whatever ends up working out and whatever gets negotiated out in a way, it's not really negotiation, but whatever the group decides is what you go with. And I think that you have no real fear of that kind of a respectful conflict. I have no fear of that kind of respectful conflict. And I don't know why, because I'm Midwest. You're Midwest too, but you spent some time on the East Coast, Talk a little bit about the skill set that's necessary, not just surrounding conflict, but but any other skills that are required to be successful in association leadership or in leadership of people in general?
In the association world, you have to be able to separate what is in your best interest from what is in the best interest of all of your members. And I serve, the 13,000 members here in Kansas City, and I serve on the state association, and I'm obviously serve on the national association. We have a responsibility to do what's best for the majority of our people.
Right.
And that can be hard when sometimes it's not really what is in your company or your personal best interest. That is a real skill set to be able to take that off, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to the members, not to you. That takes a lot of self-awareness, and it's a skill that you have to learn. You got to be really, really diplomatic, and have the ability to lose gracefully in a room when there's 15 or 20 people who may be seeing things differently than you, and you realize I could talk all day long, but I'm not going to change their minds, and handle that with grace.
Yeah.
I mean, those are tough skills.
Speaking of the National Association of Realtors, you had the delegate body disagree with the executive committee and the board of directors at our last NAR meeting. And we don't need to go into what that necessarily was, but in that moment, there was probably some kind of tension or some level of feelings in the room. You were there. We don't need to go into what the discussion was, but how did those dynamics play out? Was there anything interesting of note?
Yeah, there was. I mean, I think there were some, we haven't thought this one quite through as well as we should have, And I think that's really what happened there, was not that the concept was bad or that the idea was wrong. It was working through what the practical implications of it were going to be.
Okay.
I say that a lot of times when I deal with our politicians, and a big part of what we do is advocacy, and I think honestly it's one of the things we've got to get back to, and we have to do we can get into that later, but in the advocacy world, we're dealing with politicians. We talk about the unintended consequences of a piece of legislation. So in concept, it's a great piece of legislation. What are the unintended consequences of it? And that's our voice, right? And so we do that. And I think this is one of those things that there were some unintended consequences, that the delegate body of NAR saw and said, yeah, we got to rethink this. And I don't think that was a hard no. I think it was if we're going to go there, we got to think through it deeply. For those who might be listening who aren't, I don't want to get too nerded out on the inner workings of NAR, but it had to do with the disclosure of referrals, right? And the problem with that is a lot of the referral stuff we do these days may be to a licensee and not a realtor, because the world of online lead generation today has referral fees built into it. And so if I'm sending money to an online brokerage that is not a realtor member, they're not playing by the same set of disclosure rules that I am. So who would be the responsible party there? And so there was some of that conversation behind the scenes that was like, that one's a little strange. I don't think anybody had a hard time saying, hey, I'm going to send you to Alex, my friend in Dallas. He's going to pay me a referral fee. I don't think there was any real heartburn over that piece. But that's how it got portrayed on, damn Inman, because people need their clickbait.
Sure.
Right.
I also think that there's probably, based on, the last few years, there is something to be said for leaving some things to brokerages as far as how they want to handle things and not being dictated to by the association as far as how we should disclose something. Being like uniform anything right now is probably something that, people should at least consider for a long time.
I agree.
Don't you think? Yeah.
Well, I think if it's the right decision, we have time to get it right before we say we're doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think we got into a world on the association, all three levels, state, local, national, of moving so fast because we had no choice.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, when the lawsuit, we had to move fast.
Yeah.
And sometimes we were making decisions that we knew weren't perfect, but that we had to get it done because of timelines and the pressure and, some of the stuff from the DOJ and all that drama, right, that the average agent on the streets doesn't really care about. We had to just get it done. Sometimes done is better than perfect. And I think we fell into the trap of making that the status quo. The way we did things, done was better than perfect. And I think that our members want to make sure we get it right. And I think the delegate body said that. And I heard them pretty loud and clear. But I'm also really in tune with hearing that from the brokerage community, even here in Kansas City. Like I've spent the last 6 months trying to reach out to as many brokers as I can and just hear how they feel, right? And listen, and not tell them I'm going to fix anything because I'm just one voice, but at least they know we care enough to listen. And if we listen and we hear enough people saying the same thing, then that says, okay, we got to pay attention to that message that we're hearing from the brokerage community. We lost that. And I think when Nakia took over at NAR, one of the first things she did was start reaching out to the broker community and start saying, okay, we got to go back to those people, right? Because they matter. They're the conduit to all the agents. And I like what I'm hearing from NAR right now. I think both of the Kevins, Kevin Brown and Kevin Sears' messaging is spot on. I stole it in my speech the other night. Back to basics and back to work. You know? And I think that's what the broker community wants us to quit chasing shiny things and just focus on the basics. And if we get to that mindset, then we just got to get to work and do it.
So what I kind of hear you saying is that for once, the glacial pace at which a very large board might have to move maybe wasn't such a bad thing. Going through the process worked.
The process worked.
I don't think it always works.
Look, moving anything at NAR takes a lot of work. There's a lot of people. Right? And I think
it's maybe too big.
I think
that's an opinion, not the opinion of KCRAR. It might be big.
I don't disagree with you. Right? The problem is you have gosh, I have to be careful here politically. I don't want to say something that's going to have people angry at me. But in a big association like KCRAR with 13,000 members, we want to make sure that we have a proportionate voice.
Right. We could just leave it at that.
Yeah.
That's okay. David, is there anything else that you want to talk about today or anything else that you want to share about what might be coming in 2026? About what your vision for the year is, or do you have a word for the year? Does it involve sailing? Is there anything about sailing that you want to talk about?
I thought about being cute with the sailing thing.
I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah.
Not that there's nothing wrong with the sailing thing, but sometimes the cutesy stuff is... I thought Kevin did it. You mentioned the Kevins. Mm-hmm. Kevin Sears, when he took the reins, he had a similar approach. He's like, I'm not doing all the cutesy stuff. Yeah. Like, I don't think it's not the feeling in the room right now, you know?
And, God, I don't want to sound arrogant here. That's not my style either, right? Yeah. I think Kevin and I have a lot in common that you know this, I'm a pretty serious guy. My standing joke is nobody invites Dave to the party. They call him when there's a body. It's like, hey, there's a body, Dave. Come over. I'm like, was there a party that I didn't get invited to? But that's who I am. I'm, call Dave. There's a problem. I'm a problem solver. I tend to be able to see the big picture, and I just like my goal. Back to basics and back to work for the association. And the basics are education and advocacy. Those are the big things. What I think we've got to do better, national, state, local, is we have to explain that value to the agent in the streets. Like I had an agent today in my office that said, I wish I didn't have to be a member. And I didn't say anything. It just hit me with, gosh, you're in our office and, David Rogers myself, like we pour into the association and volunteer a lot over the years. And to have an agent in our company say that, I'm like, wow, the association's got some work to do.
Well, I do think that I have similar experiences sometimes in my office. I think that speaks to an important piece, which is that you can't just rely on the brokers to be the messengers.
No.
Because we can provide the message,
Yeah.
but eventually it comes down to how the agent directly feels, because they're members too.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's the reality of it. You mentioned advocacy. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that we need to get we're going to do some things differently on advocacy. Talk to me a little bit about that. What's that look like?
You know, we're a very large association, the largest trade association in Kansas City, and we have the ability to kind of be a pretty strong grassroots organization. But in order to do that, you need to know what's important to you from an advocacy standpoint locally. When in Kansas City, in Johnson County, in Wyandotte County, in Jackson County, Cass, Clay, all of them, even, from our association's so big now, from the urban to the suburban to the rural, what are our policy stances, right? And getting clarity on what our policy stances need to be is important. And that then says we're no longer just reacting. Like, we've been proactive and said, we know that, like right now, there's a whole lot of conversation about short-term housing because of the World Cup. What is our policy on that?
Right.
Right? And that's where
I've heard a policy on it. I've heard a stance. I don't know that there's really been a discussion, but there's a policy or a stance. Maybe not a policy. There's a stance.
But there should be a written policy.
Yeah.
There should be a written policy that says, here's how we feel. Instead of just reacting to if a local jurisdiction does something we don't like or is thinking about doing something we don't like, we mobilize well, but we're not being proactive. We're reacting.
Right.
And then let the state handle the state stuff, because that's what they're empowered to do. We can support them, but we don't need to be trying to run the state advocacy. We need to run our region.
There you go.
Look, a lot of what I'm personally focused on advocacy right now is some stuff at the state level. There's some state legislation that I think we need to look at, and I'm talking to my elected officials about it. But that's David Nichols talking.
Right.
I don't speak on behalf of Missouri realtors in those conversations. Here in Kansas City, we need to be speaking as a unified voice on things that we all agree with.
Absolutely.
And it can be something as simple as some jurisdiction wants to start charging a fee for you to put your for sale sign in the yard, right? Are we going to wait until they propose it to have a policy on it?
That's right.
Right? And I think if we do that better,
you tell your story better.
Yeah.
It provides a story.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to cut you off, but you're speaking my language, man. I think that it's so important that we get back to issues. I think what we talk about is candidates. We hear a lot about candidates. What got me involved in RPAC in the first place was issues. Yeah. It was things like a driveway tax.
Yeah.
Like, that's what got me in. That's what got me interested, right? Or concrete cul-de-sacs. Like those are the things that's what got me excited.
Yeah.
And that's, you tell that story, that's going to resonate with people a lot more than, hey, a group of people got together and we like these people. We don't care necessarily how you feel about them personally. Can you write us a check? And, like you said, I don't want to make any enemies, but we got to make sure that our message has to be on point. If we want to raise funds, our pitch has to be clear.
Yeah, and we've done great things. Like, you look at what we did in Missouri a few years ago when we passed the constitutional amendment that they couldn't put a sales tax on houses, on real estate. We've done a great job of fighting sales tax on services. That's great work that we have done. It's good for the consumer and it's good for the real estate agent.
That's
right? And so I don't think we do a real good job of telling those victories either.
You're right.
And so
if people knew,
what
they see is the mailers that say, we endorse this person.
Right.
sponsored by, the Realtor Political Action Committee.
And policies on local issues, I think our agents, our members, our brokers can say, yeah, look, we like what our association's doing on our behalf. We have to rethink the way we run our advocacy program if we're going to do that. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of change, and change is hard, and there's going to be some people who don't like it simply because it's change, and there's going to be some people who don't like it because they have poured themselves into the way it was done for years and years and years, and that's okay too. Like, they're not wrong. It's just this is the evolution of it.
Yeah. Well, David, it might be a lot. It might be hard. It might be change, but you're the man for the job, and I'm excited to see what 2026 brings for the Kansas City Realtors.
When I took over our brokerage from my friend and my mentor and the guy who had run it for 40 years, I said that it was like being handed the keys to a car and you just don't wreck it, right? And that's my thing at the association. I don't want to wreck the car. I want to make sure that I leave it maybe just a little better than we found it. I don't have some crazy mission or vision or legacy that I'm trying to build. I understand that we're just here to serve our members and make sure we provide value to them. And I think that we can do that without it being crazy. Right? I think that's something we can accomplish. But, I was at the Missouri Realtors meetings and listening to Andrea Sheridan speak, and she said something really insightful, and that was that, when you do this and you step into this role, it's not a year. It's only you only really have about 8 months, right? And there's only so much by design any leader can do in an 8-month window, right? What you can do is start a ball moving in a direction that maybe 2 or 3 leaders after you gets accomplished. And I think if you take that long-term strategy and say, okay, we're going to start a ball moving, and the people after me are going to have to continue that movement, then we will get our association where it needs to be. Now, I'm also not afraid to move super, super fast when we need to. I'm not afraid to break a few eggs if that's the speed that we need to move at. But right now, I think that there's a little fatigue in the world, and they just, the brokers, the agents, they just want to know that we're providing value and that we take care of them and that we hear them and that we care about them, and all of that is true. So,
love it. Well, David, thanks for being with us today. Best of luck in 2026.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon.
Cool.